The clock ticks past midnight in Brussels. The city is quiet, but inside the heart of the European Union, the atmosphere is anything but calm. Inside, EU leaders are locked in tense negotiations, their faces etched with the weight of decisions that could shape the continent's future. Outside, headlines scream of disaster: a €2 trillion budget, economic ruin, a union on the brink. Newsstands are filled with stories of crisis and uncertainty. This is the story you're being told, a dramatic tale of failure and impending doom, repeated across television screens and social media feeds. But is Europe truly collapsing? The reality is far more complex and far less sensational than the headlines suggest. Yes, people see rising prices, political instability, and a migration crisis. These are real problems, and they affect daily life for millions. Sensationalist headlines twist these issues into a prophecy of total failure, blaming the EU's spending as the final straw. The narrative is designed to provoke fear and uncertainty, but Europe isn't a company that can go bankrupt overnight. It's not a business that can simply shut its doors and disappear. It's a union of sovereign states, each with its own strengths, challenges, and unique histories. The diversity within the EU is both a source of tension and a wellspring of resilience. The narrative of collapse mistakes serious strain for a fatal wound. Strain is not the same as defeat, it is a test of endurance. To understand what's really happening, we need to look past the headlines and examine the facts, economic data, political realities, and the lived experiences of Europeans. Europe faces immense challenges, but the story is not one of collapse. It is a story of adaptation, of finding new ways to move forward. It's a story of resilience, adaptation, and the ongoing struggle to hold the union together, even when the odds seem stacked against it. The myth of imminent disaster distracts from the real pressures and the real strengths of the continent. Europe's story is one of complexity, not collapse. Let's dismantle the myth and see what's actually at stake. Only then can we truly understand Europe's present and its future. €2 trillion sounds terrifying, almost unfathomable when you first hear it. But the reality behind this headline number is much less dramatic than it appears at first glance. That 2 trillion figure actually covers spending over 7 years, not just one. It's part of a long-term plan called the Multiannual Financial Framework, which sets the EU's priorities and limits for nearly a decade. This plan includes both the regular EU budget and a special recovery fund, created to help member countries rebuild after the pandemic's economic shock. In reality, the actual budget is closer to €1.8 trillion, spread out over those 7 years. That's about 1% of the EU's total GDP, a relatively modest share compared to national budgets. Unlike national budgets, the EU's budget isn't used for things like pensions, healthcare, or day-to-day government services. Instead, it acts as a targeted investment fund, pooling resources from all member states to achieve common goals. The money is channeled into shared priorities, like green energy, digital infrastructure, regional development, scientific research, and humanitarian aid, including support for Ukraine. The EU budget is a tool for collective action, designed to address challenges that no single country could tackle alone, not a looming debt bomb. Every cent is agreed upon by all 27 member states, reflecting a shared commitment to cooperation and solidarity. Of course, debates about how to spend the money are real and sometimes heated, but the budget itself is carefully managed and far from unsustainable. Understanding this distinction is key to seeing Europe's financial situation clearly, without falling for scary headlines. The EU budget is about strategic long-term investment in the continent's future, not about imminent collapse or reckless spending. The EU budget isn't the real danger, national economies are. France, Italy, and even Germany are struggling with high deficits and debt, breaking EU fiscal rules. COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine forced massive government spending, pushing debts to historic highs. This strain fuels political divisions. Some countries demand austerity, others want more investment. Germany's government collapsed over debt rules. France faces political crises over budget cuts. The real risk is paralysis, deep disagreements over how to manage Europe's finances. The challenge isn't a single budget, but the inability to agree on a path forward. Europe's future depends on overcoming these divisions. Europe's economic woes are amplified by war, inflation, and migration. The war in Ukraine triggered an energy crisis and soaring inflation, eroding citizens' purchasing power. The European Central Bank raised interest rates, slowing growth and making borrowing costlier. Meanwhile, migration surges as aid agencies face funding cuts, pushing desperate people toward Europe. Frontline states are overwhelmed, and the issue fuels political conflict and populism. EU responses like outsourcing asylum have been costly and controversial. War, inflation, and migration stretch budgets and poison politics, making cooperation harder. This is the real test. Can Europe stay united under pressure? Crisis is nothing new for the EU. The Eurozone debt crisis once threatened to unravel the Union, but Europe adapted. Painful bailouts and new institutions like the European Stability Mechanism were created. The European Central Bank's bold actions calmed markets and saved the euro. Each crisis has forced the EU to learn and build stronger safeguards. Today's challenges are unique, but the principle of collective action endures. The memory of past near disasters motivates leaders to compromise. Europe's survival instinct is its greatest strength. So, is Europe collapsing? The answer is no. Despite the headlines and the sense of crisis, Europe is not on the brink of disaster. The continent faces profound stress, high debts, persistent inflation, the ongoing war in Ukraine, and waves of migration testing its borders and social fabric. Political fragmentation makes unified action harder, with disagreements between member states slowing progress, but collapse is a leap too far. The €2 trillion budget is a modest investment plan, not a runaway debt spiral, and it's designed to support recovery and innovation. No major economy is on the verge of default. Investor confidence remains strong and financial institutions are stable. The EU has weathered worse financial crises, political shocks, and even pandemics, and has often emerged stronger and more united. The logic of cooperation still holds. No single nation can tackle these challenges alone, and unity remains essential for progress. Europe's future will be shaped by negotiation, compromise, and adaptation, not sudden collapse but steady evolution. The EU is strained, but not broken. Its institutions and people continue to push forward. The real story is of a continent struggling to reinvent itself in a world of crisis, determined to find new paths and opportunities for the future. But what does the EU budget actually mean for its member states? Let's look beyond the headlines and examine the numbers. Each year, the EU allocates funds to support growth, innovation, and cohesion across its 27 member countries. For some, like Poland and Hungary, EU funding accounts for up to 3% of their national GDP, fueling infrastructure, education, and regional development projects that might otherwise be out of reach. In 2023, Poland alone received over €13 billion in EU structural and investment funds, helping to modernize its railways and support small businesses. Meanwhile, countries like Germany and France contribute more than they receive, but benefit indirectly. Their companies often win contracts for EU-funded projects abroad, and the growth of neighboring economies drives demand for their exports. For example, German firms supplied equipment and expertise for renewable energy projects funded by the EU in Eastern Europe, generating jobs and profits at home. The Common Agricultural Policy, one of the largest budget items, delivers direct payments to farmers across the continent. In Spain and Italy, tens of thousands of small and medium farms rely on this support to stay competitive and invest in sustainable practices. Of course, the impact is not uniform. Some critics argue that bureaucracy and slow disbursement can limit effectiveness, while political disputes, like recent rule of law debates, have seen funds frozen for certain countries. Yet the overall picture is clear. The EU budget acts as an economic engine, smoothing out inequalities and strengthening the single market. As the EU faces new challenges from climate change to digital transformation, member states are debating how to adapt spending and priorities. But the data shows that, for many, the EU budget isn't just an abstract number. It's a driver of real change, opportunity, and resilience across the continent. While the EU budget fuels progress across the continent, it's also the source of fierce political debate. With nearly €2 trillion at stake over the current 7-year cycle, every negotiation becomes a high-stakes contest between national priorities, ideologies, and visions for Europe's future. In the corridors of Brussels, leaders from wealthier states like the Netherlands and Sweden argue for tighter controls and more for less, insisting that their taxpayers shouldn't foot the bill for what they see as waste or inefficiency elsewhere. "We want a modern, focused budget," Dutch officials have said, not a blank check. Meanwhile, countries in southern and eastern Europe, such as Greece, Romania, and Portugal, push back, stressing the importance of cohesion funds to close the economic gap with the West. "Without EU solidarity, we risk falling behind," warn their representatives, pointing to the transformative impact of past investments. The debate intensifies around new priorities. Germany and France advocate for more spending on climate action and digital innovation, while Poland and Hungary resist attempts to tie funding to rule of law conditions, calling it an infringement on national sovereignty. Even within member states, opinions split. In Italy, some politicians decry EU budget restrictions as a straitjacket on national growth, while others see EU funds as a lifeline for regions hit hard by unemployment. In France, farmers rally to defend agricultural subsidies, while urban leaders want more investment in research and infrastructure. The result? Every budget cycle brings marathon summits, late-night compromises, and sometimes open threats of veto. But despite the drama, these debates are a core feature, not a bug, of the EU's unique blend of shared governance and national interests. Ultimately, the EU budget is more than a spreadsheet. It's a battleground where the future of Europe is negotiated, shaped, and at times fiercely contested, reflecting both the Union's diversity and its enduring ability to find common ground. As the ink dries on the latest EU budget deals, new challenges are already reshaping the landscape. The digital revolution is accelerating, demanding massive investments in connectivity, cybersecurity, and tech innovation. Experts warn that Europe risks falling behind the US and China if it doesn't act fast. The next decade is a make-or-break moment for Europe's digital sovereignty, says Dr. Anna Keller, a leading tech policy analyst. At the same time, climate change looms as an existential threat. The EU's ambitious Green Deal aims to make Europe the first climate-neutral continent by 2050, but the path is steep and expensive. Billions are earmarked for clean energy, sustainable agriculture, and green infrastructure. Yet critics question whether it's enough. Environmental economist Luca Moretti puts it bluntly: without unprecedented cooperation and investment, the climate targets will remain just words on paper. Demographic shifts add another layer of complexity. Populations are aging in many member states, straining pension systems and healthcare budgets. Meanwhile, migration and youth unemployment challenge social cohesion and long-term growth. Europe must adapt or risk losing its global influence, warns Sofia Dimitrov, a demographic trends researcher. These intertwined challenges will test the EU's unity and resilience like never before. Success will require not only more funding but also smarter policies and stronger collaboration among nations. The choices made now will shape Europe's future for generations to come, proving once again that the EU budget is not just about numbers, but about the continent's hopes, ambitions, and survival in a rapidly changing world. As we've journeyed through the complexities of Europe's financial and political landscape, a few key takeaways stand out. First, the myth of Europe's imminent collapse is often overstated. While the EU faces significant challenges, ranging from economic disparities to political divisions and external threats, its resilience and capacity for adaptation have kept it afloat. Second, the EU budget is more than just a financial plan. It's a reflection of the Union's priorities and values. From supporting struggling economies to spearheading digital innovation and climate action, the budget shapes the lives of millions across the continent. Third, the debates around debt, deficits, and national contributions often overshadow the broader benefits of EU membership. Despite the tensions, cooperation tends to prevail, driven by a shared vision of prosperity and stability. Fourth, the future is laden with both opportunities and hurdles. Digital transformation, climate change, and demographic shifts are areas where the EU must act decisively to maintain its global standing and improve the quality of life for its citizens. Finally, while Europe is strained and stressed, it is far from collapsing. The EU's ability to adapt, innovate, and collaborate will determine its path forward. So, what can you do? Stay informed, engage in discussions about European affairs, understand the impact of the EU budget on your life and community. Together, we can contribute to a stronger, more resilient Europe. Thank you for watching. If you found this video insightful, please like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the issues that shape our world.